Okay, in this tutorial we are going to create an effect which is going to follow our player around and give our player almost limited visibility with a certain radius around us. I think it's called a fog of war effect. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is if we play the game, just to show you what this game does. It's a very simple game. It's just got some enemies which are going to go back and forth. Player can move around, the player can shoot the enemies, and then the enemy obviously gets destroyed and then produces these gems. But obviously we can see the full map at the moment. Now we could use a viewport, put a really restrictive viewport in just around the player, but that would then spoil the map a little bit. So what we're going to do is switch to Photoshop, and we're going to make a new file. I'm going to make this quite large, right? So it's going to be 4000 by 4000 pixels, and the reason I've chosen that, I can probably do a little bit less if I wanted to do 3000, but I thought go for 4000. It's large enough. It's not really going to be a huge file size because we're really only going to be working with one color and then many shades of gray. So what we are going to do on this one is we're going to try and get this as close to the center as possible. We're going to use the gradient tool, and we're then going to use the radius tool here, and I'm going to choose the standard one here, which is the white to black, and we are going to make sure it's reversed. So you can see I've already ticked reverse, and I'm going to start by going as close as I can to the center and then just working out like so. So this is giving me now quite a large radius, and as you can see, once I leave go, we have a radius here. We can change this ever so slightly, so we can make it closer or we can make it larger, depending on obviously what we want. But if we go with something like this, it'll give us a reasonable size then to work with. Now I'm going to just turn the background layer off here, and I'm going to go and use my eraser tool here, and we're going to choose a feathered eraser, a soft round, and I'm going to make it relatively large. So let's go up to, I tell you what, we'll do the first part, which is just the hard middle, and we're going to make that one relatively small. So let's make that one, say 111. So I'm going to go as close to the center as I can. Click OK, and just do it again. The error that came up there was just warning me I needed to rasterize the image as well. So if I click on this now, what this has done is it's taken out, if I just zoom in, it's taken out then the center part here. So this is now an actual, even though it's a gradient, the center is going to be completely see-through. Now what I want to do is I want to fade the rest of this out. So I'm going to use a eraser, and we're going to use another feather, and you notice my opacity is quite low on this, right? So I'm going to use this rounded one. Let's go up, 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 up. Let's go to about 550. Now I'm going to type this in manually, and let's see what that looks like. Right, let's press again, press again. Good. Okay, let's go a little bit bigger next time. Let's go to 750, and we're going to click again. Good, that's taking a little bit more off, and let's go then one last time to say 850, and let's see what that does there. Good. Okay, so what I've done, I've pressed it a few times. Now we can always go back and edit this image a little bit if we need to, because I'm going to keep this open in Photoshop. One last thing I am going to do, I'm just going to go back here and make this a little bit smaller. Let's go back to 100, and let's turn the opacity all the way up so that we make sure that the center here is actually properly see-through. Now you can see I've probably done that. Now it does stand out a little bit too much. So let's just go with the feather on here, and let's make that a little bit bigger, and that's a little bit better. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to export this now as a PNG. So if I go File, Export, Quick PNG, and I've got a Photoshop folder already. I've just saved it on my desktop, so I'm going to call this S Gradient. And the reason I've called it S Gradient is because I can then import it straight away into the game. So if I just minimize this back to my dock, and we see S Gradient is here. If I click, drag, and drop this into sprites, you'll notice then this has come up here. Lovely, I've got that little center point there, which is the see-through bit. What's really important is that we take this origin and we put this origin in the center as well. Now, if I put this to middle center, all right, I was a little bit off here with my guess, but if I move it now custom to the center, I can zoom in a little bit and I can then move it down. Now we can always go back and we can edit this image a number of times, and we might actually have to as well. So let's close that. Let's make an object for this gradient. Oh, gradio. So let's bind the object. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a step, and we're going to use a begin step. Now what we're going to do with this begin step is we are going to replace the X and the Y of the O gradient. So I'm going to add two of these vars in, and I'm going to just say X and then Y. And what we're going to do with the value is I'm going to use the value of the player. So O player dot X, for the Y, O player dot Y. Now, one thing to note, this is case sensitive. So you need to make sure that you are using the correct object names. Now, once that's done, I need to add it into the room. So if I just drag this into the room for now, I can put it on top here. Really, it doesn't matter where I put it. I could put it off the image if I need to. And when I play this, what's going to happen now is this effect is following me around. Now, obviously, I've just done that very, very, very quickly. If we needed to go back and we need to edit this to do, say, a slightly different shade, we can do so. But the actual premise there is the same, where you are getting a fog effect, which is around. And if I go down here, look, it's more misty. And if I go up, we still then can't see what's actually coming. Now, I've obviously chosen a circle here. You could do a square, you could do a rectangle, any shape you want, but the premise then would be exactly the same. Now, you might want to make this a little bit tighter. Now, again, if you wanted to make it a little bit tighter, there's a few ways you can do it. What a lot of people do, or try to do, is they try to move this and make this object then a little bit smaller. Now, if I show you what might happen, let me go to the corner. Let's drag this down a little bit. It's really difficult to do this. So I've just made that now a little bit smaller, quite a bit smaller actually, just by dragging it down. And what that has done is it's reduced the size then of this, but there is a bit of a problem. So as I go over here, you can see this is now following me, but you've got that issue there where this image was 4,000 pixels, which was more than enough to cover this whole area. But now, because we've shrunk it down quite a bit, it's not enough. Now, obviously, if you look at this, this is quite... it looks more like an egg shape or an ellipse more, rather than a circle. So we need to be mindful of how big we make this and what the aspect ratio actually is. Now, you can go bigger, you can go smaller, but what you would need to do is if you wanted to adjust the size of this amount of view then, or fog, or whatever you want to call it, then obviously you need to go back into Photoshop then and make this smaller. There is one downside with using the eraser tool like I've used. Now you'll notice this now can't be edited again. If we open this gradient tool, I can draw another gradient on top, but I can't edit this one again. And the reason I can't edit it is because it's been rasterized. Now, if you notice, this was our original one. That was the new one I just drawn very quickly. You can change this so there's a closer loop to the gradient, and you can make it a little bit smaller should you wish to. So that is for you to play around with. The good news is though this: if you edit and re-export it, as long as you drag it in over this S gradient, because the code is separate, it'll work no problem at all. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense to you, and hopefully you can follow this little tutorial to show you how to do a little view effect.